Welcome to Everyday Superhumans, the podcast to restore your faith in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like that new lingo?
Yes, I do.
You like what I threw out there?
Yes,
Are you going to take it, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, it was like our suggestion to go with this.
I know.
Yeah, anyways, I'm Kyle. That's Charlie.
I'm Charlie.
Who introduced it. And welcome to the podcast.
We're going to talk about trees.
Mm-hmm. And the wonderful trees of Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm. There's so many of them.
Yeah. It's like those things you kind of take for granted, but apparently there's been issues like with droughts here in Austin that have killed off some of the native tree populations.
And fires.
And fires.
Well, it's kind of weird thinking about droughts now that we've had hurricanes.
Mm-hmm. But it's Texas. There's a drought like every other year.
Yeah.
But anyways, we spoke this week to Tyus Perkins, the executive director of TreeFolks, which is TreeFolks. Sorry, it's plural. TreeFolks, which is a nonprofit here in Austin that is dedicated to maintaining and regrowing the native tree population here.
Mm-hmm. And they have planted more than 2.5 million trees. TreeFolks' scope is about all of Central Texas. Mm-hmm. It's not only Austin, it's all of Central Texas.
Mm-hmm. And they've worked with people that we've spoken to before. They've worked with the Austin Parks Foundation and also the Minor Mishap Marching Band, which is what Allison, our first guest here in Austin, was a part of. They are a very community-involved nonprofit that's dedicated to keeping Austin beautiful. They have a really cool program called Neighborwoods, where you, if you're a property owner, can buy, or not even buy, you could take a tree from them for free and plant it in your front yard, and they'll teach you everything you need to know about caring for it.
I wish I could upkeep a backyard. That's the crummy thing about living in an apartment complex on the second floor, too, because there's no, I mean, on the first floor, you got that like little bed of grassy area, and some people do. Well, they don't do plants. Well, they don't do trees. They do some little plants. But I'm envy of people who have backyards.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a way to keep Austin beautiful and full of trees and get a tree for your own backyard, TreeFolks you gotta check out. Yeah, so like we'd like to begin like where TreeFolk began. Like what was the origins of TreeFolk? What's the full history? If you don't mind giving us a quick history lesson.
Sure. TreeFolks was started by a bunch of guys sitting around a campfire. And it was the early 80s, and they were worried about global warming a long time before it was a really part of the national popular messaging that was going on. And so they were forward-thinking guys, and they were, you know, one with the earth, and they were sitting around and talking about how much they wanted to stave off climate change. And they thought, well, the best way they could do that would be by planting a tree. And they all agreed. And they probably made a toast, you know, to go out and plant their one tree. And they did that. And they were going to check back in. And so they came back together and said, did you plant your tree? Yes, I did. Well, we're going to have to do a lot more of that to make any kind of difference. One was not nearly enough. So they approached the city of Austin and said, you know, if we get the people and the trees and the shovels together, can we plant trees? At that time, I think it was parks and down the middle of the road. And Stastny Lane's a good example of one of the first tree plantings. But the city of Austin said, yes, well, that would be fine, and we'll commit to watering it. And so they all showed up, and they planted the trees, and the city watered, and that's how this got off the ground.
And when was that?
That was in the early 80s.
So TreeFolks been around for a while then.
Yeah, almost 30 years. I think technically 28.
Oh, congrats for being around that long. How did you get involved?
I got involved. Well, that has a little bit to do with my personal history. I have a master's degree in forest science because we weren't allowed to call it forest ecology. It was at Oregon State University, and it was funded by the timber interests. So ecology was not a word that was used very much. And this wasn't that long ago. This was the late 90s for me. So I was trained as a scientist, as an ecologist, but that was never my great love. My great love was in communicating the stories of science to people.
Oh, really? It's like Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson style,
Sure, absolutely. Those are great examples.
They're known to be famous science communicators. So.
Yeah. Although I tend to think of contemporaries in the New York Times who do such a great job of, of science journalism. And then just teachers that I know and love. I love teaching. I was a traveling songwriter for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which gave me a big appreciation for what it is to do all the things you have to do for a nonprofit. Sort of a one-man show. So between those two things, I wound up teaching in southern Louisiana.
Oh, really? Yeah, we actually started the podcast in South Louisiana.
Yeah?
Yeah, Houma, Louisiana. Do you know where that is?
I know where Houma is, yeah.
Where of Louisiana were you at?
I grew up in Washington Parish and partly in New Orleans. My family's from New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
We would go to New Orleans a lot.
Oh, good.
Kind of get away from like really small Cajun town living.
Right. So for 8 years, I waited around in hip waders in the swamp,
Wow.
measuring trees and essentially documenting the decline of that ecosystem, which is dying because the Mississippi sediment can't get out into those forests. So I did that, and it was a lot of fun to drive boats around, but it was real sad work. But I also got to teach a lot. And I found that at the end of the day, what I really loved was administering, grants and institutes and teaching. And when I came to Austin, I actually wound up working for the city's watershed protection department in a left turn. Spent some time doing environmental work from the municipal side.
How long were you there?
About 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But there was a lot of people were not always glad to see me coming. When you are an environmental audit person, there's a lot of sort of consternation in your day to day. So when the opportunity came up to run TreeFolks, I thought, what could be better? It is science, it is teaching, it is people, it is nonprofit administration, which I'm a total geek about, and I just can't imagine anything more fun. And now, every day we do work where people are happy to see us coming, and there's smiles, and people love putting the trees in the ground because it's direct. I think one of the best things about what we do is that you take a tree and you put it in the ground, and then you have a tree in the ground. Yeah, it is really material.
Yeah, it's super material. It's like you don't need to wait for it. I guess you got to wait for it to grow, but you know it's there. Come back 20 years later. It's
you can
bigger.
go
That's
and
it.
check on it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not heady.
Yeah.
What's your favorite tree to grow?
Oh, my favorite tree is a cypress, but that has to do with my childhood.
Oh, okay.
Growing up in Louisiana, they're tall, stately.
Those were so amazing.
They're just hanging on to. They are, really robust.
Yeah.
And they're majestic, and they drape all over the place. And they got those great knees.
Do we have any cypresses in the Austin area?
Absolutely, we do. There's a variant here. We have just bald cypress down by the creeks and rivers, but there's a variant called the Montezuma cypress, which is more drought tolerant, which is native to sort of upper Mexico.
Okay.
And as we warm here in central Texas, we have learned that it's important to incorporate some of those trees that really like a drier climate as we start to go through drought. So one of the things we try to do is emphasize natives that are drought tolerant. And that's one of them. People plant them in their yard. You can too.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that I saw on your website. You have a program for offering free trees. Is that correct?
Oh boy, do we! 4,500 trees a year is what we're looking to place.
4,500.
It's a lot.
That's ambitious.
It's a partnership with the city of Austin.
Okay.
So it's called Neighborwoods, this program. But really, it just should be called Free Trees for Everyone.
You get a tree. You get a tree.
Everybody gets a tree. Exactly. We actually joke about that at the office. So we started doing this with the city, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago. And it went from, 2,300 trees a year, and it climbed and climbed and climbed, and now we're at 4,500.
So many.
Well, and it keeps growing, too. Like, the city keeps growing, too.
That actually really helps.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because we need more people to give trees to. But they have to be placed like a puppy. You can't just throw trees at people. You got to make sure that it's so far from the house, and a big one's not going to be under a power line. And, the whole thing started with Austin Energy, actually, which I know you used to work for, as a way to shade it. Then you don't have to replace it as much. And also, if the houses are shaded, they don't use as much electricity. And
that's true.
And I'm sure something, some reason the funding was there had to do with power line trimming of trees. And so this was sort of a reward for folks, and, a free tree if they had to take one out. And it's certainly evolved since then. We also pair the trees, they're just not just on their own, but we pair it with education for the homeowners. So we follow up We give them watering reminders. We teach people how to mulch. We do community workshops. And everybody's invited to come and learn how to care for their trees. So, you can give people trees all day, but unless they know how to care for them, it's not going to do any good.
I'm having trouble enough caring for my 2 indoor plants right now. Giving my trees a lot of
water. It's all about water.
Yeah, just water them as well.
Think
Water them, give them sunlight.
Think about them as you, basically. Like they need water. You need water.
Water them and give them sunlight.
So whenever you have water, you should water them as well.
How much water does a new tree need, might you ask? Well, the answer, because everybody always asks that question, is to go ahead and get a couple 5-gallon buckets and poke holes in the bottom of them and fill them up twice and walk around your tree and do that, once a week if you can, once every 2 weeks if you can't, every year for 2 or 3 years after you plant it. And at that point, you shouldn't have to do it anymore.
And then I guess sprinkler systems help as well, too.
Oh, sure.
Sprinklers.
Yeah, any way to get 10 gallons of water on that tree.
Yeah.
But it's hard to figure out how much water that really is.
That's true.
When you're standing there with a hose.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I really like about Austin is like how green it is here. Like I grew up in the Dallas area, and there's like a good amount of greenery, but it's like there's trees and just I don't know, just it's like such a beautiful city to look at. Like even downtown, there's like parks with tons of trees in them. Do you work with like Austin Parks Foundation with stuff like this?
Absolutely, we partner with Austin Parks Foundation in our parks plantings, and also on this Open Tree Map software we've been using to help citizens learn how to track trees. We have an effort going to do a volunteer-led survey of all the trees in Austin. And if you want to, get involved with that, you can go ahead and get in touch with us. But you don't know how to manage what you have until you know what's there.
That's true.
So this would be an effort to at least understand what we have. Austin places a high premium on its trees. It puts a lot of energy into preserving that. We've got a really robust program within the city to protect and preserve and grow the urban forest. But it's really hard to do that, with the way that Austin's growing and the drought that we're experiencing. That drought of 2011, you only really start to see the trees come down a couple years ago. Trees can live on sugars they have stored in their bark, and so you can kill a tree, and it can look green. And it's only a couple years down the line that it runs out of that sugar, and then you realize you have a dead tree on your hands. And so we're only starting to really see that now. You can see it in the hill country. You drive around, and right in the height of the summer, you're seeing gray blotches all off in the hills. Those are mostly dead oaks from the drought.
I guess I haven't noticed.
And you couldn't see it before a couple of years ago.
Well, I remember in Louisiana, it always rains, or it's just because of the climate.
Every day.
And here,
At 4.
Yeah, I know. And here, it doesn't really do that. So it must be hard.
Yeah, we moved to Austin. It didn't rain for a year.
Oh, wow.
My daughter was 3, and when it finally rained, she was 4, and she had forgotten what rain was.
Whoa.
And she went outside, and we had to explain that sometimes water falls from the sky. I will never forget that. I thought, we are moving. There is no way we're going to stay here. And, of course, I came to understand that was actually a historic event, and that was, I think, 2008. But 2011 was real bad, too.
I know growing up in Texas, we had a lot of water conservation warnings. Like, I can't remember what they call those warnings, like that you could only water your plants like during the summertime at night. Like, droughts are pretty common here in Texas.
Well, the way to help us all keep our water through those droughts, honestly, it's counterintuitive, but you preserve the tree canopy. I think there's an impression out there sometimes that to make more water, remove the trees. The trees drink water. Therefore, if there are no trees, then there will be more water. But that's not the way this works. You get a whole bunch of trees together, and they actually preserve a microclimate. They make it humid, they make it shady, and the amount of water that they take up and release in the atmosphere is not as much as they prevent from evaporating from the ground.
Are there actual people that are very adamant about, like, we got to chop down these trees to save water, or just like...
Absolutely.
There are?
Absolutely, yes.
Really?
Yes, you hear it all the time. We cut all the trees out and the springs came back. And, you hear it a lot with ash juniper. People think if they remove ash juniper from their ranch land that the water will come back. And it looks like it does. And the reason that it looks like it does is that the runoff increases.
Okay.
So they'll have a rain, and they'll get a whole lot more water in their creek than they're used to seeing. It's not because the trees aren't there. It's because the runoff is worse.
But the precipitation doesn't change, but the runoff does. You're saying, like, how much it rains doesn't change then?
Well, how much it rains doesn't change, but I think they're looking at their creek wanting there to be more water in it.
I had no idea that was a thing that people thought. I always thought that, like, more trees equals, like, more stable, like, cooler climate.
Yes, more trees equals a more stable, cooler climate, more shade, more water availability, and the water that you do have is cleaner. So places like LA know this really well. There are stages of water conservation during drought. So, like, the first thing to go is you can't use your sprinklers, and then maybe you can't use them during certain parts of the day. You can't hand water even, but the last thing to go is always large tree watering. And even in Austin, we've got sort of a 4.5 stage drought where the only thing you're allowed to water is large trees. And it's because they understand that. That if the large trees go, it's that much harder to keep the groundwater. So yeah, I would say, if you are in the middle of a big drought and you're trying to figure out what to prioritize your largest trees.
And then during the Bastrop fire, you all, like, afterwards, you all helped plant back the trees that
we
were
did.
missing. Well, the missing trees, they were gone. They were missing. We know what happened to them.
Where did they all go? No, that was a terrible event.
When was that?
That was 2011.
Oh.
During the drought.
Okay, during the drought. Perfect time for a wildfire.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was devastating. It was before I was at TreeFolks that program got off the ground. By the time I came in, it was already going. But the organization we're just wrapping up 2.2 million trees over 5 years through a combination of volunteer plantings and working with youth service groups like AmeriCorps, and then actually contracting folks to come through and do the rest because it's an awful lot to get done. But we worked hand in hand with every single person that would work with us that was affected by the fire to go in. We give them free trees. We get them planted for them. We do it in a way that they don't have to water or mess with them at all. And by the way, how do you do that? Well, you plant a whole lot more than you expect to make it. That's the answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you plant 5 for every one you expect to make it, just like nature does. A tree drops its acorns on the ground, a whole bunch of little seedlings come up, only a couple make it. It's natural. We're just mimicking that. But the nice thing for the landowner is they don't have to. They don't have another task. And that's important in the wake of trauma because people are only there sometimes. A lot of times they're gone while they're waiting for their houses to be rebuilt. And even if they are there, they just have a lot to deal with. So, this model of using a nonprofit to do post-disaster reforestation is pretty new. I'm not aware of too many other people that do it other than TreeFolks. It is part reforestation, but it's part trauma service. And so we have to be aware of both of those things when we work with folks to reforest land. After the flood down in Hays County on the Blanco River, we started in partnership with Hays County, a similar program to work with people who had been knocked out by the flood and reforest the river, which is super important because that flood took out the riverside forest, which we call the riparian forest, overnight. It just removed it like a razor. And so that's all of the water filtering ability and the water preservation ability and all of the stormwater flooding.
Not to mention just the ecosystem just destroyed overnight.
That's right. So, Hays County was recognized that and asked us if we could help. And we were willing to partner with them and create a plan. And, not only have we gone down there and done that, but I'm also proud to say we've raised over $150,000 to buy trees for the Blanco River down there.
In the event of a disaster relief, do you go and plant saplings, or do you plant like older trees that could grow to their fully grown form quicker and like restore the environment?
Oh no, we plant saplings.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, tiny ones take faster. They're more likely to live. The roots settle in faster, and then once they're nice and settled in, they grow much faster.
Okay.
You can plant a big tree because it feels good to look at it, and I endorse that. But it will struggle for longer to get those roots established that it needs to support all the leaves it has. It needs, roots equivalent to the amount of leaves in order to suck the water up to get it up there. So you can imagine that if you're doing a big tree, that takes a while. Yeah. And sometimes it never really does settle in the way you want it to. But if you plant a little teeny thing, It puts the roots out and it settles in and it stores all that sugar. And then when it's ready, it just bolts for the sky.
So what programs does TreeFolk offer, like other than the free trees for new house or for house owners, and
we got education.
Yeah. So what's the whole scope of TreeFolk that you?
Sure. So we give free trees away to everybody and educate them. We lead volunteer events in parks and public spaces where everybody can come and you don't have to know anything because we have a whole bunch of people there who do, and they teach you how to get trees planted, and that's a lot of fun. We have educational seminars and courses like the Urban Forest Stewards class, which is led by the stellar urban ecologist Sarah Dooling. And it's a year-long course. It meets about once a month, and you can learn anything you need to know and do community projects. We assist with searching for grant funds to do projects within Austin. And then outside of Austin, we have our 2 reforestation programs, one in Bastrop and one in Hays County. That's the whole scope. We do some fun stuff, though. We lead tree ID walks that are free all over town in the pretty parts of the month.
So just like a tour of like all the trees in the area, like this is a cypress tree or something.
Well, it's more how to identify trees because we're working on this key, and it'll be the first Austin street tree key that has ever been, and that's the difference between that and just a guide. Is it leads you stepwise. So does it look round or kind of heart shaped? When if it's heart shaped, go to this number, and that
you have to do the work. Like you have to do some work.
Yeah, and so we teach people how to look at a tree, how to see a tree, and how to use a key, and how to work through all that. And then, of course, we just sort of chat about trees we like, and here's a really nice example of this. And you just show up with your family, and you just kind of wander around for a little while. We also do that on bikes and kayaks, if you're feeling a little more adventurous.
That's very Austin-like.
We teach people how to do some tree climbing with some certified climbers. We're just starting that.
To not hurt the tree while you're climbing? Or
ropes and harnesses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rock climbing.
Professional tree climbing, like rock climbing, yeah.
Wow.
And so that's a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. I'd like to go to one of those classes.
And we lead workshops that are sort of one-off workshops. If you want to know a little more about this or that, and sometimes they're about trees, and sometimes they're about community partnering. How to move the needle on getting some tree, a tree project done in your neighborhood.
So you have a really large scope then. How does it take, how many volunteers do you have to work with you for all these different projects you're doing?
Last year it was 2,187.
What?
Wow. That's exact.
Holy crap. That is a lot of people. It's great though to see some people caring about the environment here in Austin. It's a native environment that we're kind of encroaching upon with building a bunch of power lines and highways and highways.
That's right. One of the things we need right now are people to teach other people. If you have any kind of enhanced interests in trees at all, then you have something to give. And we are training folks to, with our support, to lead these ID walks and to teach others at volunteer tree plantings how to plant trees is really rewarding. But we do need more people who are willing to teach others. And if you'd like to do that, just come to our website and you'll see the opportunities there, or just give us a call.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the show notes and everything so everybody can click on it and then go and volunteer.
But one of the nice things about this work, first, it's direct. There's a problem in front of you, this environmental problem, and you get to fix it. And you can't say that about a lot of environmental problems you come across in your day-to-day, So that's nice. And there's also a lot of joy. It is joy. Going out, teaching little children, and being outside in this weather and meeting your neighbors. There is some serious happiness going on here, and it's what keeps me going.
I was at OPA last night on South Lamar, and they have a giant tree that is around the circumference of the whole entire patio and building. It's so cool. You know what they've done really well with that tree? I was just there the other day, and they've preserved around the tree a large bed, a flower bed, and they've mulched it in. You don't always see that. There's a lot of businesses, so there's this decomposed granite stuff people put down, and especially businesses with big patios. They'll put it all down all around the tree's roots, and they don't understand that it concretizes. It makes essentially concrete.
Okay.
Because of the way the material settles. And then people are walking on it all the time, and they're pressing it down. And pretty soon you got something that doesn't absorb any rainwater. So when you put that down all over your patio, all around your trees for your business, you know what? If you like those trees there for the shade, for the patio, you're going to lose them. And I see it a lot right now. Now, OPA did not do that. And they should be real proud of that. And there are other stellar examples of businesses right now that have not done that. But, when you start seeing it, it's kind of all you can see.
Now I'm just going to stare at that tree next time I go there.
Well, what they need to do instead is they need to preserve as close to the drip line of the tree as they can get a loose mulched bed of soil that can still absorb the rain so that the tree doesn't, lose its access to water.
Does TreeFolks do any consulting or something on the side to help these businesses preserve the nature that they're building around?
No. I mean, we have been known to casually, talk with people about their trees.
Hey guys,
But there's a lot there about risk, and one of the things we like to tell people is if you're concerned about your tree, to get a certified arborist. And that is somebody who specializes in tree care that actually has been through the certification to be a licensed arborist.
Are there any that you like to plug that we could throw into the show notes?
Are you a certified arborist?
I am not a certified arborist, but half of my staff is.
Oh, okay.
I am more of a nonprofit management professional and ecologist, and I have not done that full certification. But there are a lot of people in Central Texas who have. And they will not only be qualified to look at your tree, but they will have a more robust understanding of risk and what that means. And of course, if they're working on your property, this came up a lot right after the storm. People had trees down everywhere. And the random guy with a chainsaw coming by probably doesn't have insurance.
Yeah.
And storm trees that are down are risky. And if somebody gets hurt while they're doing that on your property and they're not covered, then you're liable. And it's good to understand that. So work with a certified arborist company. They're knowledgeable, they know what they're doing, and they're insured.
I really like the name TreeFolks.
The name TreeFolks started 30 years ago. That's not given to me, but I love it. People sometimes refer to us as tree folk, which makes me feel like a Keebler elf in a tree. But it fits, It's very true to the ethic of starting, just really wanting to plant trees and make people happy. And it's kind of like being a little tree elf, like going around giving little baby trees to people all the time.
I envision a leprechaun.
Right.
It's like a pot of gold in a tree.
It's like that, but taller.
Yes.
And with less money.
Yes.
Is there anything that you'd like to share before we sign off with the episode? Like any big things you want to share? Like any big news that's happening with TreeFolk? Or
I would really like to emphasize to people that in Central Texas, trees are about water. Trees are about water. They're about climate. We won't be able to breathe or to have the water that we need without keeping our canopy pretty intact. And so when you're looking at your own house and your own yard or your own park, you think about that with your planning, and reach out to us if you need trees or you need advice, because we're here for you.
Right. Yeah, we'll plug all the good resources we could find in the show notes so people could just check it out. Of course, your website's going to be the first one on the list.
www.treefolks.org, and all of our volunteer opportunities are there for you.
We will spread the roots. Yes.
Well,
I wanted to do something like that.
We can what? I was going to say, we got one more question.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're everyday superhumans. And so if TreeFolks could be a superhero, what would the name of the superhero be?
The name?
The name. Or the superpower.
Are there any superheroes
I'm thinking something
nature?
like
Captain Planet.
Captain Planet.
I'm thinking something like the Green Phantom.
The Green Phantom. Oh, that's a great name.
Because, and the superpower, would be that superpower you see sometimes in the cartoons where they touch something and it grows.
Yeah.
A whole lot. And sometimes it grows fast enough to grab the bad guys and spit them up. But yeah, I think it would be the Green Phantom. We would go around in the dead of night touching things so that they would grow wildly.
Yeah.
The next morning
I like
is
that.
the jungle outside.
Yeah. It's like Jumanji in your house. What just happened?
There's a little something in me that wants to do that wants to just kamikaze in the middle of the night and tree bomb things. One of the first.
Oh my gosh. It would be like TPing, but
The tree.
But trees.
but trees.
Tree peeing?
And it would be better because the
I've
toilet
always
paper
wanted
wouldn't
to
be on
do
trees.
a middle of the night tree bomb planting, with like where you had, and either you did it like ninja style where it was all really dark, or maybe you did it like completely dressed up in Christmas lights and made a big event out of it. But, we tried something like that when I first came on board years ago. And then it was decided that shovels and darkness were probably a bad combination. But the Minor Mishap Marching Band came out.
Oh, we actually interviewed a person in that band.
Daughtry?
It was Allison Earnhardt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was our first guest here in Austin.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. A little crossover right there.
Yeah.
Minor Mishap worked with you guys?
Oh, they're very supportive of art in public spaces. And so they came out and they did, a big marching band thing around the tree planting, which had been meant to be at night, but really was more like dusk,
Yeah.
And we made a bunch of chili, and so that was a blast.
That's
What
fun.
about Christmas trees? I just thought about that. Where do Christmas trees come from? Like where do they grow?
Well, it depends on what Christmas tree
Like
you
what
want.
climate?
A lot of them are
Douglas
shipped.
fir.
Yeah, a lot of them are shipped here from the Northwest, where there's a lot of tree farms specifically for that purpose. But you can use little pines. You can use. I've noticed as the pines are growing back in Bass Drought, believe it or not, they need to be thinned. And if I was a landowner out there, I'd be, taking out the ones that are growing too closely together and sell them as little Christmas trees. But
Yeah.
we don't have anything.
But
We don't do that.
Before you know it, it will be Christmas. It's crazy. It's going to be Halloween soon.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, we can plant a tree through a donation, so you can certainly offset your Christmas tree by donating to TreeFolks. TreeFolks, 90 cents of every dollar that gets donated to us goes directly in the ground in the form of a
highly
tree
efficient.
being planted. Yeah.
Well,
so
congrats to being that effective of a charity. Most charities, like, overhead is kind of pricey. That's really good.
we are very, very proud of that.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you to, when you want to donate to a tree organization, to keep it local. Know that we've got this very direct impact and very little overhead. And keep us in mind when you're trying to offset a flight or offset your Christmas tree.
Yeah, one thing I did for a while was actually I donated to Cool Earth. Do you know them?
Yes.
Yeah, I donated to them for a while for carbon offsetting. I guess donating to TreeFolk would be a local way of doing that too.
Well, the trees we plant stay here.
So you support Austin and also not feel guilty about driving your car to work every day.
Exactly. We will do a huge tree giveaway at the Tony Berger Center in November, where I think 2 per household is what you can get. We will do in the spring a flowering tree sale that will actually generate income for the organization, because when all those beautiful flowers come out on the plum trees and the pear trees, everybody gets excited and they want one. And so we'll do a big flowering tree sale. And that's just one more way to get one.
Perfect. So yeah, if you are a property owner looking for some more trees, you know who to go to. And also, if you find a tree in your front yard someday, it might be the green phantom sweeping by. Keep Austin green by checking out TreeFolks at treefolks.org. You could also keep up to date on any events or fundraising activities with TreeFolks on facebook.com/TreeFolks or on Instagram and Twitter at TreeFolks.
Feeling bad about the world? Does the 24/7 news cycle keep you down? Never fear, Everyday Superhumans is here. Restore your faith in humanity at everydaysuperhumans.com, where you can learn all about the people saving the world each and every day. You can also follow us on Twitter at SuperhumansCast, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/everydaysuperhumans, and check us out on our Instagram at everydaysuperhumans.
Have we restored your faith in humanity again? Then be sure to rate and subscribe to Everyday Superhumans on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling really generous, we have a Patreon page you could go donate to, and that is at patreon.com/everydaysuperhumans.
And remember, not every hero has to fly, so grab your cape and let's go.